Budgets and revenue are things that many of us don't automatically think of when we're determining where to focus and hone our activism. But the security of many in our communities rises and falls based upon line item decisions made by our elected officials in Helena. Because of the inability of the Montana legislature to meaningfully raise revenue during the 2017 special session, 19 offices of public assistance throughout the state have been forced to close. These offices helped our families with everything from food security and connecting folks with disabilities to essential services, to moms and kids fleeing domestic and sexual violence, and basic incontinence supplies. That's right, the legislature chose to cut funding for incontinence supplies over asking the wealthiest Montanans to pay the same rate of taxes as the rest of us. And that's probably what you've seen in the news recently, but in truth, that's only a small sample of the things affected by budgets set in Helena and Washington. How we raise revenue, and whether or not we even choose to do so, affects everything. Public education, state parks, the library, Meals on Wheels, sidewalks, expanded Medicaid, and more. And the trend towards cutting vital services that our communities depend on instead of pursuing smart revenue-raising measures is not only a trend in Helena. On the national level, the tax bill passed by Congress and signed by the president at the end of 2017 is primarily a massive tax break for the wealthiest and corporations. It also raised taxes for many low and moderate income people, and it boosts the number of uninsured Americans by millions. And by now that's probably old news to you, but did you know that the federal tax proposal would also shoot a hole through our Montana state budget? The Montana Department of Revenue estimates that the federal tax changes will more than likely impact the state general fund to a tune of $46 million. These estimated revenue changes are the result of corporate and individual income tax provisions and are shocking to say the least. There's a distinct possibility that we'll end up in another special session because of it. And if we learned anything from the last special session, it's that our legislators will look to make up this shortfall by cutting even more essential services out from under Montana families instead of collaborating on strategic, long-term revenue raising. And Montana cannot weather another hit like this. On the heels of this massive tax giveaway, with our state facing incredible impacts as the result of decisions made in Washington, many members of Congress have said that they intend to seek deep cuts that would likely take away health care, food assistance, support for people with disabilities, and basic services from families that struggle to afford even the basics. And on top of that, Congress continues to fail to reauthorize CHIP funding. The point is this. The budget is integrally connected to moving forward our shared values. Creating and strengthening communities that support and protect everyone in them is inherently tied to budget decisions made in Helena and Washington. I'm not one to soapbox doom and gloom without providing tangible steps forward, though, in part because practical activism matters, and in part because I know that the collective energies of all of the people from across the state who are planning to march again on January 20th can and will be vital to correcting the terrible budget decisions made by Montana legislators and members of our congressional delegation. So I have 6 things that you can do between now and January 20th to take action on the budget and stand up for Montana families. The first is register to vote. In Missoula, there'll be Montana Women Vote volunteers out along the march path and in Caras Park. If you've recently moved, if you want to get an absentee ballot, or you just aren't sure what your voter status is, find a volunteer wearing one of these sashes, and we'll get you set up for success. The second thing that you can do is vote. Vote values forward. Find information on who actually supports revenue-raising measures and who wants to take that money and put it back towards programs that our communities rely on. Then talk to your friends and family about why funding basic services is important to you as a voting issue. The third thing that you can do is call your local legislator. Tell them that our families can't take another hit because of lack of political will when it comes to revenue raising. If we do end up in another special session because of the tax bill, Montana legislators need to pass long-term revenue-raising measures instead of pushing that bill onto Montana families in most need of support. The fourth thing that you can do is to call our congressional delegation, and I'm sure you've done this a couple times already this year. It's super easy, it takes very little time, and it is our responsibility to hold our elected officials accountable for the decisions that they make. They need constant daily reminders of the strength of our resolve. As they move forward with the budget this spring, we need them to know that we will not tolerate any cuts to safety net services that Montana families rely on, like CHIP and SNAP. The fifth thing that you can do to take action is to share your story. Are you or someone you know directly impacted by cuts made in Helena? We want to hear from you. Use this form to share your experience, and we'll be in touch about writing a letter to the editor, potentially talking to press, and more. Your story is one of the best advocacy tools in your tool belt, and we want to hear from you and lift your story up. The last and probably most important thing that you can do to move forward this conversation is to collaborate. If you aren't directly working on budget-related stuff, it is certain that someone else is. Lift up advocacy and activism on budget and revenue in all of its forms, including phone banks, lobby days, calling your legislators, sharing letters to the editor that your friends write, and more. And the point is this. We are in a little bit of a crisis when it comes to the budget in this state and nationally, but there are tangible things that you can do to move this conversation forward. The budget is integrally connected to our shared values of safety and respect and self-determination, and it is essential that we use our collective energy to strategically push for revenue raising on behalf of our family, our friends, and our communities.